Shelley. I forgot where I was now. So the in-person forms require that you put tent cards together, that you go to a venue, that you set up the room, you take it down afterwards. And you have to deal with an audience that is an unknown entity until they arrive. And in some cases, it can be volatile. In some cases, it's totally fine, but you don't know. The virtual forums don't have that problem. The virtual forums are very well controlled. And the opportunity with the virtual forums is that you can put those online. You can have a lot of people look at them who don't have to be there at a certain date and time. They have a lot more access that way. So there's a lot of advantages to doing it that way. Some people just don't want to watch the virtual forums. They really like the in-person. So every local league has to have its own decision-making about what do we want to have come out of this? How do we want the public to be approached? How do we want the public to respond? And then those are the kinds of trade-offs that you would look at. Some local leagues have gone to a speed dating format. So the speed dating format is an in-person event where the candidates stay at one table and the audience rotates, or vice versa.
It's the other way around. The candidates rotate.
Yeah, candidates rotate, but I've seen it done both ways, but that's okay. Thank you. And in that case, there's an in-person contact. It's very personable, very personal. And you get a brief glimpse of the candidate. Usually it's about 15 or 20 minutes per, So it's more open-ended. It's more opportunity to be flexible. But again, there's only 15 or 20 minutes for each person that has exposure to a candidate. So really, for every local league, it's what are your resources? What is your objective? What's your public like? And how do you, what kind of staff, what kind of volunteer support do you have, and how much can you actually do? So I think, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
One of the things that I think is really great about those in-person opportunities is the candidates seem to, like you say, really enjoy the interaction with people, but it does limit who can come. Especially if you have a countywide race. We have one legislative district in Kitsap that's almost the whole county. And so people aren't able to maybe make our forum. And people don't drive at night as much anymore. And so that's another thing. Getting volunteers to come to a forum at night is kind of hard if we are worried about that. So it's something to consider.
And can I add one other thing?
Yeah, no, I have one more too.
Oh, you should go first.
Well, okay. One of the things that we've discovered is that the virtual forums, the audience who looks at those later is really dependent on the amount of controversy in that race. And so we've actually had cases where we televised something and put it online after an in-person forum, and then we put it online. And that was the biggest forum in person and the biggest one online, because there were more people interested in what was going on in that case. So you just never know. So,
and I was going to say, as you consider what to do and look at capacity, be very aware of what is happening in the community. So, for example, our forums are virtual, but we had scheduled one and became aware that one of our local communities, Edmonds, was holding an in-person forum. We said that's fabulous. We don't have to do it all. So become aware of what else is going on in your community and choose to do what you can do and allow local communities to hold their own as well. That's just more opportunity for folks. So I think it's important to be aware of what else is going on.
What sense is virtual with an audience? Is that what we call them hybrid, but that's all of our forums.
I think we live stream ours. So it's a live stream, which means there can be an audience, but, and then it's up to you whether or not you want to take questions.
Well, we have an in-person forum.
Oh, you can have this.
It's hybrid in that people can join over Zoom and they can ask their questions using the Q&A function. on that, and we find that that is really the best of all worlds, because you can see the interaction with the people, but those who can't go for one reason or another. And we've had sometimes, at least one forum, we had 100 people in the room and 200 people signed up.
Really?
And are you able to record those as well?
Yes.
That's,
Yes,
see,
they
that,
are.
that's the
That's
gold
the-
standard. So
that
we
is
could all
good.
do that.
Yeah. If we can
And
afford it.
And that's also with, because we do all of ours on Zoom, but I actually, a bartender said, oh, yeah, I'm so glad you put the phone numbers out, because when I'm on shift, I just have it in one ear, and I listen to it on my phone while I'm working. And that's because sometimes leagues will just put out the Zoom link, but all those phone numbers, when you create Zoom, there are some people who their jobs or whatever, I mean, I think of, people working as a parking attendant, people working on a shift where it's kind of slow, they can put an earphone in and listen, and we make sure that we put the word out, listen on your phone. You can also listen on your phone without the video, just to hear live and hear the live reactions, but you also have to make sure your moderators are saying, and now candidate so-and-so will answer the question, so that they know who's talking. We learned that, on our second, Zoom thing, when people are like, I didn't know who was saying this stuff.
Susan?
And to that point, I'm Susan Daniel, and I'm in Kitsap. So when you have a comment, at least it would help me for context, if you would give your name and what local league you're from. So, for instance, I know when Susan was talking, to me, it made a difference that she is from San Juan County. So they've got so many people on different islands who might be interested in that. So when you have a comment, if you give us that information, that would be helpful.
One thing we did on Clown County, one of the big peninsula, and one of the things we just started doing last year is we started chaptering each question. So at the very beginning, so if people don't want to listen to the whole Zoom, we can say, okay, at 1:20 or whatever, this is the question that was asked. So people can go directly to that, just the one question and not have to listen to the whole thing. And that's been pretty successful. We've had a really good response with doing that, because people, people go on, and you're talking about a lot of things that they may not be interested in, but they may have a couple issues. So that's really been good help.
And I think if folks want to talk to you about the way you do that, that would be helpful. So you were from Clown County, I suggest to talk, because you have to have some back end, it takes some time to do that. So if you want to understand how Clown County.
Let's do one more and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
My name's Lynn Whitland with Whidbey Island. I am relatively new to the state, to this whole forum concept, and we, on Whidbey Island, we collaborate with Snow Isle Libraries, and so it's online. My question is, I know a lot of the candidates prefer in person. And my concern is, or my question is, how do you address the potential for great partisanship in the audience? In other words, how do you predict and or control for or manage the audience? I mean, or is it just a crapshoot? You don't know.
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm going to answer from my perspective, and you may have other ideas. As a moderator, I've done a lot of forum moderating. I've been in some candidate forums where there was a lot of controversy, and batches of people would come on one position or another. And basically, you start by laying out ground rules. And you basically, if it gets out of hand, you just stop and you just say, we're not going to proceed until this stops. And that has worked for me. I haven't ever had anybody protest further.
There's been a time where I've asked everybody to stand in the room and we won't proceed until we can sit down and be civil again. But you do lay out the ground rules ahead of time. To know ahead of time, that has a lot to do with knowing what is there a craziness going on? And we learn that through the news, through the voters pamphlet, if they're calling names or things like that. And you have the ground rules and you remind them, and the moderator needs to have a few little things in their back pocket to say when people even the candidates say something, or an audience member. And you have to ask that of, sir, I've had to say it to a man this man
Yeah.
said, would interrupt us a bunch of times. Remember, Shelley?
Yeah, and one important ground rule is no applause
Yeah.
or comments until the very end. They should applaud. But
Yeah.
that's where a strong moderator comes in and, like Jim said, stops it. And
One man, we just had to ask him to leave.
So the key
And-
implied, it sounds like is in the moderator question.
Yes, it is. It's an important thing.
Deanne, you had said she would be the last one, but let's pick up
Oh,
you and then
well,
Karen's gonna pick it up
In,
next.
I know in Clark County, maybe there's no, no voter paraphernalia, no,
Right.
it's on t-shirts and
right.
hats.
No.
That's hard to enforce in the audience, but it is something, a rule for the candidates. And those signs in the auditorium, that kind of stuff.
And I would just also add to that, you think through what your question process is. So who's asking the questions? And usually in an in-person forum, it's the moderator that's asking the question, and audience can submit questions, and you have a team that compiles those and gives them to the moderator. So it depends on your style in the forum. If you're allowing questions from the audience, that can present a whole series of different challenges. But if you're controlling that a bit more,
Yeah.
it makes it a little easier.
We need to move
Yeah, we have
to.
to
We gotta move on.
I just want to say that even our members that are helping with this forum, you need to make sure that they know that they're not chummy with one side or the other, because that's a civil place, and you don't want any of that going on so that we look one partisan. Thank you.
Okay, I will move us along. I'm gonna talk a little bit about planning ahead and making sure you got your ducks in a row before you start your forums. And it really does take some time to do some work. You really should, as a league, have a written set of policies and guidelines. Now, you need guidelines and ground rules for your participants. But you also, you should have a league policy that actually defines how are we gonna go about this? What are our rules of the road? And we have there's tools that we'll be sharing with you. There's a whole series of tools that you can pick up from. I'm Snohomish County, and we did create a candidate forum policy, and it is board approved. And we do review it and take a look at it and update it. And ours is in the link. And Shelley, I don't know if you're going to link.
I'm
it.
trying.
They're great. If they don't want to try.
I had it all set up, and then when we had the Zoom problems, I
Oh, and
lost
that's
it.
okay, but the point is, things that you want to think about ahead of time, this really will make your life easier. Your policy should be stating that you're nonpartisan. Your policy should be thinking about how are you dealing with the question of an empty chair, or what does that look like for you? And it really should be a written policy and guideline for you. You want to, the things that we considered in our policy, you want to buy in writing, say, what candidates are appropriate for us to include in our forum, and what are the rules around that? This is the threshold you have to hit to be considered eligible for a forum. Our rules consider how will we communicate with candidates. So we say top to bottom, it's going to be the same kind of communication with every candidate in every way. And that we have guidelines for what those forums will look like. And then we also we added some points about, for us, who we partner with and what are the requirements for the folks that we partner with. Do they have to be nonpartisan? What does that mean? So if you think at some of these things ahead of time, and then we post that on our website. So on our candidate forum page, so anybody in the public can see what our policy is. If you do that thinking up ahead of time, it's really going to help you just be grounded in, we know what we're doing, we have our rules, this is how we go forward. So if you haven't done that, it takes some time, but you really want to be thoughtful, and you're welcome to use our policies as guidelines, and there's other policies that are posted there too from other leagues. How many of you actually have a written candidate forum policy board approved? Really important to do. It's one of those wonky things, but I really would recommend that you think it through. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. And then I wanted to talk to you about how do you get the candidates to participate? Now, I recognize this can be a little bit, this is going to open up a can of worms. However, I just want to give you some tips of maybe the way we work, and certainly offer other folks to add as well. certainly you want to start early. You want to start well ahead of, you know, when the candidate filing dates are. You should be paying attention to that. You should have, we hope that you have for yourself a calendar that says, here's what I'm gonna do at what time. And it was really helpful to plan that out so you know how to follow all of this. Are you all aware now? Can you do this link, Shelley? Can
Yeah.
you- Oh, here, excellent. Okay. I hope that you all know how to link to the Secretary of State's website, because on that website, you can request your county and the year that you're looking at, the election that you're looking at, and you can pull your list of candidates from the state website. You can download this then as an Excel spreadsheet. There is your candidate information. You have phone numbers, you have emails, you have which candidates are running in which elections and which races. So we do this and we download it all, yes.
I had trouble last year because some candidates did not put a phone number
That's right.
or an email.
You, because that.
And
she's at my
it was,
state.
you know, essentially, one of them was an incumbent, so luckily I went through his official.
You can respond to that. I was going to say, that two things. The PDC website is your next place to look, because they will often have a phone number that didn't get posted when candidates. Yeah, Public Disclosure Commission, the
Where they
PDC website.
Report their fundraising.
Yes, so go to the PDC website and search out their name. If you have a great relationship, and you should, with your auditors, your local elections office, call them, because they will often have a phone number or an email that didn't get anyplace else, but they have. So those are your three sites, the Secretary of State, the Public Disclosure Commission, and your own local elections office. And I guarantee you, if that information is there, those three sites will get it to you.
Karen,
Yeah.
can I add, I wasn't gonna talk, but I can't help myself.
She loves this stuff.
I recommend looking at both. I've had situations where I've had an email that for the campaign on one and a different email on the PDC. So if you can't get through, check them both. If that doesn't work, call your local party, anything, you can find them.
Yep.
Facebook, Twitter, you'll find them. I find them.
And that raises the point is that you, oh, yes. Go ahead.
I know, go on, and I'll say what because we're talking about getting early and gathering the contact information.
Yes.
Right, the week before filing week, we run an editorial in the newspaper.
And we're gonna
Say-
talk about this later. Can I put that on hold a little bit? Because we have a slide that talks about, work that we'll do to get the word out.
Oh, no, but I'm talking about announcing to the candidates, hey, if you're planning to run for office, you're gonna get an email from this email address inviting you to our forums. Citizens, if there's a contested race in the county and there's not a forum scheduled, it's because some candidate didn't respond to our emails. So that's that, like, we basically front load the process by saying, we're gonna reach out to you for a forum. Like, know that we are. This is what we do. We love doing it. Here's our YouTube page with all of our past ones. Here's how we do it. It's a very inviting kind of thing. So candidates, you know, the week after filing week, be on the lookout for our emails, because we want you to be in our forums, and we want to reach, because our geographic area is so big, blah, 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 whatever, you know, and we tell them, look for us.
So there's a great suggestion to get the word out ahead of time. And what's embedded in that, by the way, is the next thing we want to talk about, which is you need to be letting the candidates know what's in it for them. And one of the things that is in it for them is what your reach is. And so I would propose that if you are, depending on how many folks normally come to your forums? If you are live streaming, recording, and podcasting, and then showing it afterwards, how many people watch those forums? And there are ways to get that data. And we've been able to tell candidates that in the last election, we had over 10,000 views and listens to our forums in Snohomish County, as well as exposure on the radio. Tell the candidates that there's value to them in being in your forum. And if you can figure out a way to get that data, it is really helpful. So I really encourage you to track what's happening so that you can share that with the candidates. In your communications, a couple of other things, we've set up some fun things and you may or may not use this. We actually, how many of you use a tracker on your emails when you communicate with your candidates? How many of you use an email tracker? Because you don't know, it'll tell you, did they open your email? And that is really helpful to have. So we set up, these are just suggestions for you to do as you can. We use a generic Gmail. Each one of our coordinators has their own Gmail. We work within Gmail accounts. There's a tracker attached to it. So the coordinator who's doing the work can see, did they get it? Did they open it? And then when you're doing your wrangling follow-up, which you gotta do, you know, they didn't even open it. Did it go in spam? Are they ignoring me? But I know they didn't open it. So I know I'm gonna have to follow up with a phone call or a text or additional information to get to them. So think about making sure that your communications are uniform and you have some way of seeing what the candidates are how, if they're responding or opening your emails. It is really helpful to do that. Other things that really should be included in those emails to your candidates, you all do this, but I just want to remind you, you want to make sure you're sharing your written guidelines with them. Here's the rules of the road, right? When you come to the forum. And that by saying that you will participate, you're agreeing to our guidelines. It's implicit. We used to have them sign it. Oh my gosh, what a pain. We now say, when you say yes, that means you accepted our guidelines. It's
The box
implicit.
is checked. We're
Yeah,
sorry, we don't give
exactly.
the opt-out option.
Yeah, you can't opt out. If you're in, these are the rules. Make sure you have rules and standard communications. I'm sure all of you do this, but you want a set of sample emails that if you have multiple people contacting, they're using the same information and that's how they're communicating with candidates. And track your progress. Can we show this one, Shelley? I don't know if you can show the spreadsheet. This, oh, there you go. Vicky knows.
I'm
This is
ahead of
one
you.
of our coordinators. So again, these are tools and ideas, and you may do it differently, and I'd love to hear from you. But again, we use Google Drive, and every one of our coordinators has a spreadsheet that looks like this. And so it's the date of the forum, when it is, and they're responsible for it, and they track. Yes, I sent that first email. What the date I heard from, the date I sent out the link to the forum, the date I confirmed that they were there. What's lovely about this is I'm the coordinator. I can go in and look and see, oh, what's going on? Should something happen to that person setting up that forum? I'll know where they were and I can just pick up and move forward. So set up some sort of a tracking system that you can share that'll help you keep on top of all this. Otherwise you'll go crazy. Why does this matter? It depends on how many forums you do. We're doing 14 in the primary. Last year we did 34 forums in Snohomish County. So in the primary in general. So we have to have this kind of tracking. But we have a full team that does it. So we have a full team. So figure out a way to track. And finally, don't give up. And if you're not using text, our coordinators have found one of the best ways to get to folks, yes, to the Facebook page, Shelley, that's great. And also they will almost always respond to text. So if you have a phone number, make sure you did your email, you gave a phone call and said, hey, we haven't heard from you, is it in your spam? Then text them. And usually that really works. So I see a question here and here.
Well, I just wanted to add, I always have a sign-in sheet for my guests and for my new participants, because sometimes things change and I at least have that record there.
Oh, you
when
mean
they
sign
come.
it at your live forums?
Yeah.
Oh, that's helpful. That's a good tool.
And I send emails to the people that are guests because they want to know where that thing is.
Oh, after the fact to tell
Yeah.
them you can find the link here?
Yes.
Good idea.
So in addition to the phone, the emails, and we also do a formal letter.
You do a written letter. We don't do that, but that's great. How many of you do written letters still?
We do a registered letter when they don't answer our phone calls and emails.
Yeah, we went with the tracking. That's great.
I'm so glad she mentioned the idea of keeping a tracker or something like that. Because that leads into the moderating. And this is, I'm gonna start at the beginning. Back to what Cynthia said, why do we do these? We do these because voters want information. And we believe it's really important. And to do that, we need to set up a forum that is fair, informative, respectful, and inclusive. And so we have to think about that as we're setting it up. How do you do that when you're the moderator? Because remember, the moderator is the face of the league. The face of the league in your community, the face of the league in our other leagues in the state, in other states. When a league member in Iowa does something crazy, we all hear the league's name doing something crazy somewhere. So a moderator is a really important face for your league. So you, as a person who wants to be a moderator, need to be able to be confident in yourself, because you want to know all those rules, all those policies, because that's going to be important as we move forward in what happens when you're a moderator. It also is important to have all those pieces of paper that said, I contacted every one of these candidates and they said yes. Because a moderator also has to be ready to apply the policies, because your policy should probably tell you what happens when someone doesn't show up. How are you going to handle it at that event? And so your moderator has to be super confident in all their knowledge on all those things. And then when they prep for the forum, they have to get ready with the information we talked about. How do you find out if it's going to be a crazy forum where you might have candidates on Zoom yelling back and forth at each other? Or you have a problem where you can't hear the candidate on Zoom. How do you handle those kind of things? So you have to prep and think about those. And I would really recommend that, I'm sure you all do this, have a script and you practice it before the forum. Because what that will do is also allow you to see how many things you're going to say, so you know how many questions you can ask. Because if you're going to give every candidate a minute to answer a question, and there are 6 candidates in the primary, that means you know that's going to be about 7 minutes possibly for each question. And if you're only doing an hour forum, you probably at the very most have 7 questions you can ask, right? That's 49 minutes. And you have maybe 5 minutes beforehand where you're introducing the league and how we got here. We asked everybody and we welcome you all. And here are the ground rules, because both the candidates and the audience needs to know the ground rules. So they feel like everybody's being treated equally. And then you have 5 minutes, not exactly at the end, to thank everybody for all of them attending. Respect the candidates for putting themselves forward, because this is not an easy process. If you've ever been a candidate, you'll know that. And at the end, if the audience want to know things, we thank them for being there at the forum. It's really important. But those are the kind of things you have to prepare for, the script ahead of time. Now, the day of the forum, that's the fun day for the moderator. They need to get there about at least 10 minutes early, either on Zoom. Hopefully you have a meet a 10-minute time in for the candidates to come in, so you can reinforce how one of the people in the room is the best person at telling people, you should move to some other background. Or maybe you can take the light and move it over here and not right behind your head. We do that in that time. We go over the rules again, even though we sent them and assume they all know. And we ask them to say their name for us. We want to know how to pronounce each one of those persons' names appropriately. And you have to think about yourself as a moderator. Do you want to call them by first name, or do you want to call them Ms. Abel and Mr. Abel? How do you want to respond to those candidates as they're there before? So that's really important. And that's when you start to show your authority and your respectfulness to each of those candidates. And they get to see that you believe they're an important person, and this is an important thing we're doing. Yeah.
Just want to say, so, Angela Berto, again, Jefferson, because we do everything on Zoom, we actually have somebody who's designated as our technical lighting and sound thing, so that's separate from the moderator. So while the moderator is getting their head together, it's a tech person rather than the moderator who is on, and this is typically for us, the person who's also sitting on the timer, doing the timing. So that person, we actually separate those roles out so that, and we have a separate printed list of tech instructions that goes out to the candidates is one of our series. With all the tech lessons that we've learned over the last 4 years, with specifics for them to pay attention to, and blow by blow, minute by minute, what is expected of them coming in and that kind of thing. So that there's no mystery. I mean, there shouldn't be a mystery on Zoom anymore, but it still happens.
Can I pop in?
Yeah, Shelley.
The handout you just got with the QR codes, I didn't know how to give you links that you could use, but on the league, the state league website are resources. And included in those are a couple of documents, one from TVW and one from Thurston County Media, on tips for the candidates for their background for high quality production. And so that if you don't use QR codes, go to the league, state league website for members, voter services, candidate events, and we've got everything there for you.
It is really a good site. I was gonna encourage people to go there, because it can also help you how to be a better moderator, because there's good paperwork on there that people have put together over time about what you want to do to be a good moderator. But once you start the forum, that's when you assert your authority and welcome and respectfulness to the audience. And so now it's a kind of a different confidence you need to send out to the world. Project is the word I was looking for. Thank you. And so it doesn't matter if it's Zoom or in person. Although when it's in person, you get to probably talk to the audience beforehand, just like the candidates do, which is very nice. But that's important. You want to make sure you introduce the timekeeper, even when it's just a little square, so people know that's the place they look. Because what happens is when the forum starts, you now, as the moderator, you have your questions, and every league will figure out a way they want to get the questions, either from the audience automatically, we do ours in Kitsap where we get them ahead of time when we're doing Zoom. If it's in person, we have cards. Those, everybody has a different thing depending on the situation. And, but the moderator has to listen to the answers, because there's a couple things that can happen while people are answering. They could just go too long. That's the easiest one in my opinion. And you have to figure out how to, I usually lay a ground rule is that you can, when your time is up, you can finish your sentence, but after that, I'm going to interrupt you. And I let the audience and everybody else know that. But I also, just a simple, thank you, your time is up, usually stops everybody in their tracks. Then they may not answer the question. They may not have understood it. They may not have answered it because they don't want to answer it. Who knows what it is? But it may be that after all the candidates have answered it, you might want to rephrase it. But you have to hear what they've been saying. So is it a mistaken understanding? Is it that they didn't want to answer? And if you think it's one of the questions that you got from the audience, and you got 35 of these along this topic, it's one they want to hear the answers to. So you have to know that too. And then finally, they might be disrespectful as they talk, and they may say something that is not nice about the other candidates, about something else, and you have to nip that one in the bud before it goes even through the sentence. And you can just say, hey, remember our ground rules. We're all going to be respectful and civil, and the voters want to hear from you about the issues, not about your fellow candidate. So that's an important, you have to have a few of those in your back pocket.
Quite a few years ago, we had one candidate said we were endorsing him. We had to take care of that.
Yeah, right. Those kind of things. That's why you have to be such a good listener during that part. While you're asking the questions, you want to have a moderator who's really hearing what those candidates are saying. And it's hard because you're getting your next question and you're looking at the timekeeper, but it's so important that you're able to do that as well. Is that a handout?
We need to
I know,
move on though.
Okay, well,
Do you want to take one more? Or
Yeah,
do-
we'll take that one.
Angela Napoleon Library, Skagit County. I had heard nothing about bilingual, about, interpreter.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about how.
At our forums, we have not, found that. We have worked with the local, kayak, it's called, Kitsap Immigration Assistance Center, to see if we can at least get some written materials translated. But it's really hard to get volunteers to do that. So do you have something that you've done in Skagit?
We have a person who is willing to speak in a microphone. I'm sorry, let me stand up. Speak in a microphone, and having headsets for people who.
Wow.
And do they just say the question or do they give the answers too?
We looked into
Wow,
that.
that's pretty amazing. Cynthia?
On Zoom, you have the option of interpreter. You can actually arrange for an interpreter and have that, and other people don't hear it, just the people that sign up for that.
I understand, we talked about that in our recent one in Spokane, but the cost was enormous. So, to have an interpreter, I didn't know about the Zoom one, but
No,
that was live.
Yeah, we've
But-
done it in our league, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I'm gonna continue because we're running short on time.
Yeah, I just wanted to do one last thing, is that then you get to say thank you to everybody at the end, and be sure that you do, your members, the audience, and the candidates. But my last thing is, think about how you can get a photo of all the candidates together, maybe just a Zoom picture. I'm sure if you planned it ahead, you have somebody that's doing that. But when you send out the next thing about your forum, you want, having a picture helps a whole lot. We had a great forum, you want to watch it, here's where you go. And so getting a picture is really helpful. And it's amazing how the candidates, when you're in person, will get together for. They just finished. They're like, oh, yes, I like you now. Yeah, but go ahead. Cynthia.
so,
Sorry.
Oh, my part is about questions, but I just want to add something to the moderator part. When you have a whole bunch of questions from the audience, you're not going to be able to cover them all. So the moderator should say to the audience, I am sorry, we are not able to cover these all. Here are the most frequently asked ones that we receive. Because I've been criticized before for not doing that, and I learned my lesson.
That's
So,
a really
yeah.
good reminder.
So what do we do about questions? And the questions are really indicative of how nonpartisan we are or are not. And so one of the things that, we've learned in the last few years, as we've gotten more polarized in our political environment, is that the more we ask questions related to lead positions, the more polarized people feel we are. So one of the things that we have to do is start reaching out to a broader community, asking them what kind of questions that they want to ask. Asking other groups that are in your community, particularly the more conservative ones, what would you like to hear the candidate talk about? And get that back and use that as a way of making sure that we are very nonpartisan. And that we're not just trying to promote our own positions here. So another thing that is important is to have other people review the questions, not just the moderator, so that we make sure that the questions do actually they make sense, that they're short and sweet, that they are nonpartisan, they're not necessarily progressive, and so forth. So get a committee together and have them review the questions before they go forward. In terms of criteria, I've already talked a little bit about being unbiased, but another aspect is making sure that the people submitting the questions, the moderator, and the candidates all understand that these are about things that every candidate should answer. They're not directed to one or another. And particularly in the live forums, we get cards that say, ask such and such about this, and we cannot do that. We absolutely cannot do that. Making sure that if there's a multi-part question, that it is toned down into one. You don't want a yes or no answer. If you have a yes or no, you could say, and please say why. So it's not, you do not want a yes or no answer in any of your questions. But you also you don't want to have a long essay first and then ask the question. So you want to make sure that they're edited to make the point without having a whole essay up front, which is something that we tend to get a lot, particularly in the vote for home questions that local leagues submit. There's this whole long series of sentences and then the question. So when you're editing, you want to really shorten it down to getting to the point of the matter. And I think I've covered everything on this, and I'm running out of time, so I'm
Yeah.
going to stop there.
Okay, Sharon, do you want to quickly go over?
I'll give you the 90-second answer on publicity and marketing. First of all, do it. You know, make sure that you are, if you can ahead of time, if you have the opportunity to write an op-ed or letters to the editor, do that to let folks know the forums are coming. If you know your schedule early enough, put that in your op-ed. Make sure it's posted on your website, make sure it's on your Facebook page, make sure you're letting folks know. Use social media. If you have partners, and libraries are a great partner in this, and your elections office, make sure they know what your schedule is and that they're getting it out there. And if you've got a good relationship, we have a great relationship with our elections office, and they actually post a direct link to our website and our candidate forums, because we do so many, that's part of it. So you can get the word out in many ways. And then continue to let folks know that those are available. The last thing I'll say about that is, make sure that they're available on demand for anybody when they want them. They'll go back and watch your forums from the primaries and the general, if you make it very simple and easy to get to. But think about how broadly, use your partners, anyone that you're in coalition with, send them that link, let them know where they can find your forums. Ours are all virtual, so, but if you're doing in person, absolutely, get the word out as broadly as you can. That's good, it's great for the league, true, for us to be seen in that way, and we should be, because it's really important work.
If you are doing it in person and have a local paper, ask them to be a co-sponsor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That actually helps to get more publicity, for one thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the local newspaper, try to, if you
Yeah.
have local newspapers.
Yeah. You could even consider having them be a co-moderator. We have
Yeah.
done that
Right,
with editorial
right.
page managers, be a co-moderator.
In Clark County, which has five, in the third congressional district, which has 5 counties, previous congresswoman would not appear, right? Because she did not feel like the Columbian, the major daily newspaper, would give her a fair shake. So we broadened it, and we got newspapers from all 5 counties
Oh,
to be co-sponsored,
good to
and it's
know.
worked.
Nice.
Great, Angela?
So just in terms of the scale of outreach, so for the forums that we do for the 24th Legislative District, which cover 2.5 counties, I have 48 organizations that I send 3 separate press releases. The first press release is, we're taking questions for our upcoming forums.
Right.
Here's where you can submit them. And I make sure that those go to the political parties in each county in the same email, so that the Republicans and Democrats know that they're getting it at the same time. I send it to all the civics organizations at the same time, so they know who, and I put it in the CC so they know who else is getting it. So the first one is, we're taking questions for the forum. The second one is, the Zoom links for our forum are live. And the third one is, the recorded Zoom is on our YouTube page. So they get 3 hits from me, 46 emails that have to go out. But to make sure that people feel included.
Yeah.
Like the Elks Club in Hoquiam gets 3 emails from me when they want them. But
It matters, that matters. Actually, it's 3 emails, it's a broad distribution list.
Yeah.
Totally manageable.
yes, and a little bit of customization for dear civic partners. We care deeply about this, and it like, you guys show them. You do.
That's great. That would be a good thing to send to the state league, to let them put up on their website. Because that might not be something somebody, then it also will let people think about what are the civic groups in our community. And so, and get that list, because that's sometimes hard for folks to, and they change. Because we always put our signs up, a forum will be at this neighborhood school. We had to go door to door and ask them to put their little letters on their signs outside, you know.
We're running out of time.
Oh, no.
We're at 55 minutes.
5 minutes to have.
But I want everyone to thank our panelists. Great information. And if you have questions, Kim won't be here very long, but Karen and Cynthia will be here today and tomorrow, so any of us.
I wanted to say one thing. I've had trouble where we've had moderators that were sick, or they have a husband that has a heart attack. So I'm telling you to look out in your land for people that would be good moderators and train them. So you can give them a call at the last minute and they can do it.
Or
We have
just
backup moderaters for every forum.
Yeah.
We have a moderator and a backup moderator. Got a timer to back up. Back it up.
But I mean, you have to look for it ahead of time. Oh, you do? Yeah, we're
Oh,
going
we
to.
do.